Now, looks like you've arrived at another draft physics video presentation. Sorry. Yeah, wrong number. Um, it's comments, video. It's just, yeah, there's just nothing to interact with. There's no challenge to anything I'm saying in any coherent form, and it's just quite depressing. So I'll just sit here and be depressed. Shit. Oh, I have an obligation. Alright, buck up, endeavor to persevere, blah 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 blah. So, the video response to the Ken Wheeler bullshit, whatever his real screen name is, unpronounceable gibberish, 2,000-year-old Greek crapola. Anyway, I appreciate you explaining the real nature of the ferrocell gizmo that Ken loves to show off. Right, and invented by some other guy who also sort of, exaggerated in terms of describing what's taking place, in the sense that he started off with, just doing laser experiments, and I guess then arrived at this understanding that if I shoot lasers at different angles, I get all kinds of mess. And but anyway, that light somehow is really being bent when the light doesn't really get, when that doesn't really happen to it in any real sense. You're just seeing one version of reflections that are taking place going in all directions. So anybody could have a view from a different perspective and see a different thing, because you're reflecting the light. You're not diverting the light, in the sense the light isn't going somewhere and you're seeing where it's going. So when those little lines show up, doesn't mean that like that's a laser beam going there. There's a whole bunch of light going through that little tube of light. So it's just very deceptive, because we see the traditional laser beam. We're seeing a tiny percentage of the actual laser beam is reflecting off dust particles and going to our eyes, but most of the light is going somewhere. Well, in the ferrocell, the exact opposite is happening. The light is going all kinds of places, and none of it has anything to do with going through that tube that we see. So again, just there's room to deceive, and they deceive. Anyway, I hate to admit it, but that liar duped me a while ago, had me thinking the spirograph pattern of the light meant something. Yes, that it was a reveal of some sort of real force thingy or something, when it's completely illusionary, in that the lines that are creating it, just like in magnetism and where the iron filings line up, the lines that are actually the lines of force that are actually creating the pattern don't look anything like the pattern. And real scientists can deduce that from the evidence, suggesting something about the nature of the magnet, right? That there's some sort of field that mimics that shape, and there is no field that mimics the shape. There's just the incidental fact, the emergent property, that at different angles, different spokes will produce a reflection that'll get to me, because the thing will be at the right distance and for me to see it. Combination of distance from the center versus angle of alignment. So those two things will match on different spokes, and those are the spots I'll see the light reflected at. So the light never has really anything to do with the pattern at all, in the sense of where the light's going. That's about as clear as you can make it, I think. Alright, he talks about it as though magnetism is actually bending the light. Yes, and they do this crap, and it's really annoying, as opposed to simply configuring the fluid's components in a way that reflects the light in such a pattern. Correct. It's just reflections off of arranged dust particles. You would kind of look at it that way. The other guy chimes in. To be honest, if you listen to Ken without bias, Jesus. Um, you know, this assumption that there's something like if you just took Ken's words and put it in a different, had somebody else read Ken's script, that somehow it would make any more or less sense. I mean, it's just the words are what they are. I should go look at the transcript of his video, right? And you just have read it in another silly voice, and it'll sound just as silly. I mean, nobody would understand it. I mean, if you took his audience and you gave them the paper and said, read it, okay, and then tell me you understand it. Bullshit. So I think all the bias is on the side of the Ken Wheeler, whatever they are. Lensophiles, I don't know. Very expensive camera files. Anyway, you should notice within a single video or two how he never actually explains anything. Yes, obviously the people who are listening, just like the people who listen to conventional physicists, they understand nothing. Nothing. They really understand none of it. They just like the personalities because they're all animated. String theory is fun. It's all stringy. Blah, blah, blah. You know, there's some personality thing that compels them. They love the idea of being, oh, I'm being intellectual because I'm listening to physics. You know, they do that kind of thing. And in some sense, I think they like the wooiness. It's implying all kinds of magic. I really do have ESP. I really am Cleopatra reincarnated. I think there's a lot of men who do that. You know. Anyway, bias. You should notice within a single video or two how never explains anything. He's only hating on other scientists. Well, let's be clear. Mostly dead ones. Okay, most of the people he picks on are dead. He's such a coward. He's praising Tesla. I mean, he's picking fights with dead people. You can't get lamer than that, right? He's only hating on other science. He's praising Tesla like some sort of god genius, and in this vague sort of way because Tesla figured out bent space is kind of retarded. You know, where there should have been a lot of people. Well, I think there were a lot of scientists. I mean, look, Einstein wasn't catching on, okay? I mean, on his own, you know, without the help of Max Planck and Eddington and a few other people, Einstein wasn't going anywhere with this, hey, I have this wooey theory of, you know, this bent crap. You know, I mean, the whole Einstein story is full of, you know, kind of bizarre contradictions, non sequiturs, I don't know what to call them. I mean, the very idea that he's famous for saying, you know, the phrase spooky action, when you really think about it, that's all bent space is. Bent space-time is spooky action. There's no mechanism. It's spooky action at a distance. All right. Anyway, he likes to claim nobody knows shit. Well, clearly nobody does. That's just a fact. I mean, except for me, everybody else has got shit for an understanding. I mean, conventional physics is wrong about everything. I mean, bent space is stupid. Time being a dimension is just idiotic. Even by Einstein's own logic. I mean, he got the part where light is the ultimate tester. You know, that light is impervious to being fucked with. It always does what light always does, which is travel the speed of light. And it doesn't care whether the thing's moving. It doesn't care whether it's going forward, going back. You can't make it go faster. You can't make it go slower. I mean, he's the one who started with that idea and then perverted it by thinking, well, because the light clock in the spaceship will let you know how fast you're going, the light must bend on Earth too, because it bends in the spaceship, so it must bend on Earth. So now we have to end, that led to the whole Eddington bullshit and this whole nonsense that somehow the force is bent by gravity when the evidence doesn't make any sense, full of contradictions again, where, well, look, gravitational lensing from all these galaxies, and yet all the places that should have it, there is none. So it doesn't make any sense. On its face, the evidence is completely contradictory, and yet they all fall for it. And you're just saying, no, that's pretty bad. I mean, it's a pretty bizarre theory that somehow you can, break the rules of time, rather, and just in basically, you have two choices, right? You say clocks break, okay, or time breaks. In the sense that you can somehow escape time happening in the universe. You can somehow bubble yourself from the universe. Even that notion that you can have this frame and that somehow the rules of the frame are different, when the frame always has to be connected to the real universe some way or another. There's no frames whizzing by you right now. There just isn't. There just aren't frames going around. There's things in. They're real. We know when the bullet is shooting out of the gun, it's not time dilating and disappearing by any other mechanism than just going so fucking fast we can't see it with our very slow camera. That's all. Well, anyway. To claim nobody knows shit, which is true, despite everything being simple. The irony is, right, he says it's so simple, nature's not a crack whore, blah, 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 blah. And yet his explanations are all tornadoes and whirly-doos and spinorani's, and, it's all full of stuff. You say, well, how does any of that happen? How does it get into that configuration? Where does the energy come from? I could just keep saying that, So these are people that sort of are picking on their physics for lacking those details, like where's the energy coming from, and then they propose something that doesn't have any energy in it either. So anyway, any videos that claim to reveal anything are basically void of explanation. Yes, and usually contain some gimmick experiment. Again, like the time he pressed a bottle against the wall to show, with ferro fluid to show some sort of effect, when clearly you could understand it's a plastic bottle and it was a rigid enough plastic that it dimples. When you compress it, the plastic can't compress, so it pops back up. I mean, obviously, the effect is a product of the plastic. It isn't a product of any of the ferrofluid moving for any other reason than the plastic was being dimpled. Duh. I mean, that's kind of stupid experiment. The spiral, Spyro. Words. It is a problem with age that they do escape you. They're right there to be grabbed. The little thing that spins, the points in directions based on gravity and such. Anyway, he puts it on the edge of the magnet, and comes up with this whole bullshit explanation. And the obvious explanation is that when you tilt to the side, when you go to the side of a magnet, well, then you're getting the effect of the south pole of the magnet, quite obviously. But anyway, I mean, just gimmicky experiments. And then he says things that are just so outrageous and nobody calls him on it. So like his claim that from 40 feet away you can hold a magnet and change the electrons in a old TV, a CA cart to CRT, that somehow from 40 feet away you can move a magnet around and somehow you'll see the pattern in the screen, which is just fucking impossible. Because of the inverse square law. I mean, it's been tested, and his claim also that, the more powerful magnet has a smaller field or some other kind of crap, which is more just nonsense, proven nonsense. And, nobody calls him on this crap. Well, where's your evidence? Show me. There's no showy. There's no show me. Alright, anyway. With one big masquerade of complicated sounding words that mean nothing. Yes, all his dialectricity thing. Taking a word like, a concept like a dielectric, which is a semiconductor, an insulator that can hold charge on its surface, a specific thing, and as if it produces a specific kind of electricity, which it doesn't. The weird part is how his so-called book on magnetism is this exact same crap, a total waste of time. Yes, it just keeps promising to get to something, and it never gets to anything except look at the tornado and this. This obviously creates attraction. If I do this, I flap my arms like this, somehow if there's two of me and we're doing that, we're going to smash right into each other like a magnet. No, we're not. It's just so stupid. Alright. But yes, there's no way to scrutinize any of this crap. They all get away with it. The David D. Hilster guy's been claiming that stupid, because of the swirly things in fluids, and they have a slight tiny attraction and a slight tiny repulsion, that somehow they've explained magnetism. And you're just like, no, that doesn't even come close to explaining magnetism. Magnetism is an incredibly powerful attraction and incredibly powerful repulsion. How has your spinning crap explained it? No, you haven't. The spin, and just by logic, you're saying that the spinning explanation, the swirling or swirling medium explanation, is just nonsensical on its face, because the amount, just think of the pressure that two magnets create, when you're trying to push them together, and you'd have to say the swirling pressure would have 1,000, 1,000,000 times more energy in it to create that much pressure. And so they'd be like, you could, you could run the whole city of New York off just the swirls in one little magnet. It'd have to have so much energy in it to produce that kind of repulsion. Anyway, if it was swirling. You're absolutely right. I read his book a while ago as well. Yes, I read it likewise. Well, most of it. I mean, it's just, you just glaze over, because it's all the same shit over and over, regurgitated in a few different words, but it's just bullshit. And was pissed I wasted my time with it, considering he never defines any of the terms. Yes, and the format is a complete mess. And there's just nothing that says, oh, eureka, I understand. Nothing. Coaxial cable. Again, to describe a photon. How do I connect coaxial cable to a little bit moving the speed of light? I don't see how I do that. The majority of this book is just quotes and neat pictures, and I don't know if they're that neat, but yes, it's just incessant quotes. And like you said, he never explains a damn thing, all taken out of context, of course. What really gets me is he complains that theoretical physicists fail to define field. I mean, it's always a good thing to say, field of what? I mean, it's a fair cop kind of argument. But yes, he says there's no field, and then the next minute he's using the word field. So it doesn't make much sense. I mean, he obviously means ether when he says field. Yet he does exactly the same thing by equating field and ether with dielectricity. Yes, and with a lack of inertia. He says with dielectricity and with inertia. Yes, and he says this thing like we're supposed to know what a lack of inertia is. What the hell does that mean? All words he defines nowhere. I mean, it would still, not moving would still be your inertial state. I think the word inertia should just be thrown out. Frankly, I don't think it serves any purpose. So, but whatever. I mean, obviously things are, I would argue the electron, for example, is always moving somewhere. It's going to be somewhere in every moment. And depending on the field, okay, the pressure around it, what's around and what's creating weird reflections of energy bits, it'll move in different directions, but it always has to be forced to move somewhere. It'll just go back and forth and up and down like this and in and out. It'll just do that if left alone. That's all it'll do. If hit by an even field, it'll go heads, tails, heads, tails, heads, tails. If you fairly flip the universe. Alright, so that's it for the comments. I mean, just amazingly thin. Oh, did I read this one? Oh, no, I didn't read this one. Okay. Okay, we'll read this one. K. Wheeler always likes to quote Tesla as if that will mean he is right about Tesla. So this guy is kind of a Tesla defender, which is a little bit irritating. And also Einstein, by the way. He is right, but Tesla and also Einstein, by the way, didn't believe that atomic power was possible. Yeah, well, it's just true. It's a fact that Einstein made a joke about the unlikelihood of creating a neutron chain reaction, which is sort of what you need to do. You need to throw one neutron in and get 3 neutrons out, and then those 3 neutrons hit another atom and get 3 neutrons out, and the atoms just keep killing each other. And yeah, he thought that was not going to happen, and the year after he said it's not going to happen, a guy did it and showed that it can happen. So they were wrong about that. People can make mistakes, and not everything they say has to be true. Well, I don't know if that's the moral of this story. The point is that people are agenda oriented, and they stack the deck in their propaganda to attempt to make an argument. And so people are making arguments that are I'd say willfully inaccurate, where they know better and they just don't care to state what they know, because it's not to their advantage to tell the story they're trying to sell. And they're trying to sell it for some agenda reason. Like you could say the, whatever his name is, Jack the Scientist, or whatever he calls himself, scientifically. He's not very scientific, he's religious. And so he's just, allowing the science to play some role in his religious propaganda. And so he's not doing science. He's doing something quite evil. Yeah. Deceptive, dishonest. There's a huge amount of garbage about Tesla going around. Some people even claim he was a time traveler. Well, I mean, obviously the mystique is just so stupid. And all of those obsessions, Tesla would probably appreciate that, where Einstein, he did sort of he did sort of joke about how silly people were to think he is the smartest man on earth and all that. I mean, that was just stupid. He knew it, so at least he was honest enough about that kind of stuff. He even made a Tesla joke, because somebody asked him, what is it like being the smartest man on earth? And Einstein said, go ask Mr. Tesla, because Tesla was the type to think, oh yes, I've done it all, I'm great, I'm fantastic. Where Einstein knew, I'm frail, I'm a jerk, I'm an asshole, and I've been wrong, I make mistakes. Alright, the whole thing about radiant energy, some say it's about ether. Yes, well, obviously there's this obsession with ether. I don't know where it comes from, I don't know why it exists, I don't know why people like I guess it's just, I have to answer the question, why do I dislike it, I suppose. I don't like the word, okay, because it does have a religious-y kind of context out of it, like God made an ether kind of thing. First there was the ether, and then God pulled things out of it or something, or some kind of bullshit like that. So it has some, and it is an old word, so I don't like old things, generally speaking, because yes, they are covered with cooties and wrong assumptions, usually. And it doesn't provide any explanation. I mean, just saying, alright, there's elemental jello. Somehow it's just a fundamental thing. It's not made of something, so it's not like water and it has little atoms in it. It's not this, it's not, it doesn't, it's just mushy as a concept. I can't conceptualize it. Alright, unfortunately people don't even bother to take the time to read his patent Yeah, well, I was surprised at how much detail he did put in that one patent. There's a lot of pages. I mean, usually patents are, kind of brief. You don't go into a bunch of theory, so it is interesting that you do get insight into his theory in some of his patents. So maybe people just don't realize that. It'd be clear that it's about a photoelectric device. I don't know which patent you're talking about, but whatever. This is one of the excerpts from that patent. So I don't, he's kind of jumped a little there. Like, okay, so a specific claim about a specific device. The rays or radiation, which are to be utilized for the operation of the apparatus above described in general terms, may be derived from a natural source such as the sun, or may be artificially produced by means. See, this is the kind of detail no one would bother with. They would just say light. So, but fine. Probably another patent that was never realized as anything. So, blah, 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 blah. But anyway, again, there's the point is that it's not that Tesla was wrong about everything, but let's understand that the major thing, the thing that, he had specific jobs to do, and he just wouldn't do the specific job because he had this underlying delusion, that you could pull all of this energy, all this swirling stuff was in. See, he thought the swirling stuff was there, and that you could grab the swirling stuff. So he was wrong to think you could grab it, even if it exists, and he was wrong to think it exists. So anyway, okay, so that's that. All right, so somebody did email me, which was sort of interesting. I'll read it. Took out the name to protect the innocent and such. But it is bizarre, just in the context of all these videos, and this happened after I've already made this point about the 2 plus 2 plus 2 physics. I've really sort of made it kind of simple, and you really shouldn't be able to make mistakes anymore. Anyway, I noticed there's an email under your video, so I'd like to use it to consult some points where I guess my opinions on how things look different from how I guess you see them work. Yes, well, why don't you just post this as a comment? I don't know, there's nothing incredibly, I don't see the reason for emailing this. For that purpose, I brought up a few model situations and would like to make such a screening of your opinions. Okay, so he's soliciting more information. Okay, fine. So I propose you first try to answer, and I will argue so that we can come to some constructive conclusion. Well, I think the conclusion is that I'm right, you're wrong. It's going to be the conclusion. The goal is to figure out how nature works. Well, I'm sort of pointing out, eureka, I figured that part out. Anyway, not to humiliate anybody here, okay? Well, it's not the objective is not humiliation, but the emergent property, the byproduct of I win, you lose, is likely to be some kind of humiliation. So if you have a strong opinion about something that's in conflict with my opinions, I'm afraid you're going to be humiliated, because you will lose the argument. That's just the way it's going to work out. 4 bits excluded, so this is like, okay, just take out the biggest player in the story. Okay, so there's no goalies included, and now let's analyze soccer. Let's see. Anyway, 4 bits excluded. 2 balls in space would attract or repel, or no mutual interaction. Mutual interaction is sort of a redundancy, right? To have an interaction, there has to be more than one thing. But anyway, I mean, quite obviously, I've made it clear that matter bits only move because they are forced to move. That is, there has to be a change in the force, the field of force. If that doesn't change, if there isn't an extra photon or an extra little bit of change in the field, it goes from being electron bits to being proton bits, something has to change, or the object doesn't move. Force bits excluded, so I don't know what to say to you. Yes, obviously be no mutual interaction if there's no force to make things interact. That's what they communicate with. They can't interact if there's no force to communicate with. Force bits excluded, again, would matter in these balls disintegrate. Again, what are they made out of? So if you're saying they have matter in them, electrons and protons, well, the electrons and protons without any force bits would not connect to each other. There'd be no charge, there'd be no interaction between them. They would go wherever the force told them to go. Now, obviously, if there's no force, they're not going to go anywhere. They're just going to sit there. So there's no reason to disintegrate unless you build in pressure using the force bits. But if there's no force bits, then there can't be any pressure. So if you just took a static picture of every electron and proton and said, okay, I'm just doing this static thing and now I'm going to eliminate the force, well, yeah, it would stay the way you statically took the picture. Now, force bits included, we collapse ball A into a smaller, denser sphere. That means you make the atoms closer to each other. You have to force them to be closer to each other, and if the force is included, that means there's going to be more pressure between them. So if you put the electrons closer to each other, they're going to have more pressure pushing them away from each other. So if you release the pressure, they'll be free to move back out again. They don't like being close to each other. Is the general principle. Now, force bits included, we collapse the ball into a smaller, denser sphere. So again, the physics is elemental, so it's going to be something subatomic. It's nuclear physics. All the physics is nuclear. There's only the force bits and the electron and the proton. So you have electron force and proton force, two kinds of force, plus minus, and you have two kinds of elemental matter, plus minus proton electron. That's all there is. There's no other players. Everything else is a composite of those pieces. So you put a proton and electron together, you get a neutron. You put electrons around protons and neutrons, you get atoms. Everything else is made of those elements. So I don't know what to say to this. So when you say a denser sphere, again, you're just saying more atoms in the same space or less space for the atoms you have, which implies, again, that you're going to have to pressurize the atoms. That is, the electrons in the atoms will be closer to each other, and that has a consequence. Alright, smaller, denser sphere, then mutual interaction will drop or stay the same or will increase. As I've made clear, pressure is essentially heat. You could use the words interchangeably. Pressure is heat. Okay, so it's just a fact. And you're creating more pressure, you're creating more heat, so yes, things change. Force bits included. We make the ball hollow, decrease its mass. Okay, I'm just fine, sort of, but not very good description. So let's say it's the Earth, and we make it hollow. Now, making it hollow has a consequence. So if you really want to do this project of digging to make a little biosphere inside the Earth. So let's just pretend it's not molten and all this other crap, and you want to go 4,000 miles down and dig yourself a little little living space. The catch is that you can imagine doing that, but as a practical matter, even if it wasn't molten and all that stuff, the pressure is insane. And so you'd have to have like girders that are going everywhere to hold up against the pressure. You have so much pressure, and it's an insane amount of pressure. I mean, not insane. I mean, it's a million pounds per square inch or something. So, you have to use carbon fiber or something. You have to have so many pieces of it that there wouldn't be any room for you to exist in your little ball, because you couldn't make a sphere that could withstand the amount of pressure. But if you could, yes, it would be a gravitationally bizarre place to be, because gravity would be substantially reduced. Let's see what it says. Make a ball, then mutual interaction will drop or stay the same or will increase. Mutual interaction of what? One thing in space with another thing in space? Are you saying there's two different things in space and you made one hollow? Again, it just doesn't say anything. Gravity is not what most people think in terms of it's or even how Newton's equations imply. It's not one force. You excrete a reflection to the world, and you receive what other people reflect. So the gravity you produce is different than the gravity that affects you. They're independent forces. Your gravity, your change to the world, which you get stuff coming in and you excrete. What you excrete is different than what you receive from other people. So I'm just saying it's so obviously if you've reduced something's mass, it has less gravity. Now its parts are still going to be affected by other gravity. So you didn't change the sun, for example. If I make the earth hollow, I don't change the sun in a huge way. I mean, obviously the sun won't move as much towards the earth because its gravity is less. But the earth will do exactly what it was doing before, in the sense that the little pieces of the earth are still attracted to the sun the same way. So nothing's going to change in terms of the earth won't fall out of its orbit. Alright, but your question was too vague to know. Then mutual interaction will drop or stay the same or will increase. So again, this mutual interaction, the only interactions that are elemental and the only ones that are the real interactions are on this subatomic level. Again, all of what I'm doing is emergent. The little universe had to do it first. They're the ones making me do all of this. The electrons and the protons and the force between them, they're causing me. I don't cause them to move. They cause me to move. They cause me to think and do this and do that. Every bit of it is caused through their motion, not through my initiative. I don't have initiative. They have initiative, in the sense that the force forces the matter to move, and the matter moving changes the force. And that interaction is completely deterministic by these simple interacting rules, the two interaction rules, reflection versus diversion of a force, and that's it. There's nothing else to, but like I said, your question is just way too vague. Alright, 5. Force bits included. So we have the real universe. We have atom of Fe, iron, and Xe. I don't know what that is, but let's just assume it's something heavier. Which of them is attracted toward the other with higher gravitational force? So let's just pick two things that have... The atomic weight dictates how much gravity you can produce. Doesn't change how your little bits are affected, because gravity is affecting the electrons and the protons, and they're all the same mass, and they're all affected the same way, so it just has to do with how many of them you have will dictate how much gravity you produce, how much gravitational effect, that is, how much change in the field you produce. can be changed by your mass. But you can't change what something else produces by changing your mass. So the gravity you're being affected by will be just as effective. So the simple answer is, which of them is attracted towards the other with higher gravitational force? So obviously the lighter object, okay, will be attracted by a stronger force than the just by logic. Gravity, you affect the field by having matter to absorb energy. If you don't have matter to absorb energy, you can't affect the field. Just if I'm transparent, I can't absorb light. I can't stop it from getting somewhere. I can't make a shadow. All right, looking forward to your answers. And just a kind of an amazing statement in the sense that I just don't know how you couldn't have answered every one of these questions for me based on, like I said, any one of these videos has already explained this over and over again. I just don't, so whatever. If it helps, fine. I don't understand the confusion. I mean, 1,000 videos, theory maturing over that whole time. Lots of discussion about this element stuff and the fact that the only universe is the small universe, that matter is basically forced to do something. Fields are made of force. Fields are made of soldiers. Okay, they're not. They're made out of corn stalks. There's real stuff in the field, and you change the field when you change how the matter interacts with it. Whether you're a proton or an electron means you'll change the field in a different way. Alright, so that's about it. So, disappointing. Guess we can delete this from here anyway. Alright, and I need to do more writing and all that stuff, of course. So, I mean, there's the two sides to this argument. The two parts. The first part is giving you some reason to understand that conventional physics could be wrong, that all these smart people could be full of crap. Here we go. We got a new comment. Nell Wallace. I don't get why you don't just do a PhD in physics in a university. Well, because it takes like 8 years and it's expensive. You don't get why I don't do that? And as I'm pointing out, I think their whole fucking theory is crap. And I guess the biggest reason would be is that, unlike what you think, obviously, mathematics explains what you know. It's a formula. See, formula is like the word formulation. So it's really just saying you're taking something that has lots of busyness in it and you're elementizing it. You're figuring out what the important part are and you're putting them in a formula. So formulas are just saying we see an effect. We know there's certain variables like how wide this is and how long that is and how heavy this is. And we know those variables are deciding how the outcome comes out. And so math is just formalizing those effects. So it's taking this simple idea that the variables are the causing the effect. And if you do your formula correct, you'll get the important variables in your formula, and you'll be able to decide what the outcomes will be. And there's lots of ways to do math in all kinds of abstract, sort of tricky ways where you can move variables around because certain variables equal the same thing no matter how you arrange them. And the speed versus mass is sort of the same thing, whether you have one divided into the other or one multiplied by the other. They're sort of reliable, dependable variables. But I mean, most of it's just math. I don't want to waste 5 years of my life learning how to do abstract math. That will not explain, that will not make you a model maker. It's like being an artist. You want to be a painter. and you could spend 5 years, okay, learning how to make the color blue out of pigment or something. Well, why don't I just buy a tube of blue? I don't really want to waste my time learning how to make blue. Okay. There you will allow your theories. There you will allow your theories. That's really not any kind of English. To be critiqued by other scientists. Do you think that's what happens at universities? I don't think so. You think it's just some sort of open conversation and we're going to debate how solid what the professor has just said. This professor just said something like Lewin says there's voltage, the 2 different voltages in the same location. And you try to point out to him, well, your probes are in the frickin' experiment, retard. He's not going to pay any attention. Anyway, critiqued by other scientists and allow you to potentially critique existing theories and papers, etc. And how can you not do that in videos? These videos do that. I right now play other people's crappy videos and I point out how that's a pile of crap. That was never proven. They never did that experiment. I'm overtly doing that. What's not happening is they're not responding to a single question I ask. So I ask them what the field of what? I ask them what their bent space is made out of, how where'd the energy come from? I mean, things are moving. Every atom, when gravity happens, every atom inside of something has to, in a sense, have a net velocity, acceleration in a direction. What's causing it to move? It just, one of the things is, hey, the space is bent, you gotta move. Why is it moving? But those questions won't be answered. Alright, without peer review, your theories are, again, this idea that these are peers is just nonsense. Review is really important. Critique is really important. Again, I'm encouraging that. I'm soliciting that. I have stated I will pay real money, real cash money, all right, to a professional physicist, somebody who actually has a degree, to defend fucking conventional physics. I will pay you for your time to do that in live video, okay, or even in video exchanges. I'll pay them. All right, and I still can't get them to show up. They're the cowards, quite clearly. They've deleted me off every message board, merely for challenging elemental things. So if I challenge the idea that you can replace bent space with something that's more rational as an explanation, like time dilation, you can explain it as being, no, it's just cryogenics, okay? When you give something velocity, you're taking heat out of its system, essentially. You're forcing something that was doing this to do a bigger circle to move, and therefore the time slows down for it because it doesn't do as many cycles per second because it's doing a longer cycle. I mean, simple explanations. And they delete you. They will not engage in the conversation because they're cowards, because their physics does suck. They haven't done the experiments. They can't produce the evidence. And that's the truth of it, and I've proven it. You'll not find anywhere where somebody solicited my participation in an argument where they were going to attempt to humiliate me and I didn't show up. That never happened, okay? I've declined no invitation to be interrogated. None. Without peer review, your theories are very likely to contain unseen errors. So, says you, I mean, clearly I've made mistakes. In the 8 years or whatever I've been doing this, I've had ideas that were not fruitful. But the basic ideas, the basic concept, has in fact gotten more and more solid. It's covered more and more area. I mean, I start off just challenging gravity, and now I'm challenged every bit of their physics, entanglement, wave interference, all of it. That's just the nature of the game. So again, the nature of the game is to produce a model, like my model. Go to my magnetism video in the subject videos. and just explain how there's anything in there that can't possibly be the right answer. There's any element that, oh no, that can't work. It works perfectly. No virtual photons, no wooey spirals, no tornadoes, no bullshit. A very simple explanation for why magnets very powerfully attract and very powerfully repel. Alright. If you want to make a contribution to physics, well, I don't want to make a contribution to physics. I'm challenging a religion. So I don't want to make a contribution to Christianity. I want to burn it at the stake. Okay? I want to throw it in the toilet. And that's where physics belongs. As I've stated, since Newton, science died. Okay? When Newton died, scientists died. Because they've lost all discipline. They just jump way ahead of their evidence. Everything that looks like is like. So all it has to do is seem. Oh, it seems like. Well, then it must be like. No. They don't wait for evidence. They just jump to conclusions. Silly, stupid conclusions. I'd say you need to engage with physicists. Yes, and that's what I've said exactly the same thing, retard. Okay, so yes, I need to have a professional to hack to pieces to show you just how lame they are. Not with all respect to them, YouTubers. Whatever that, not with all respect to them, YouTubers. Well, there's physicists who are YouTubers. I don't know whether you realize that, but there are physicists on YouTube. And they're cowards. Okay? Plainly, I have invited them to participate. I've offered them money. I've offered them money for their time. I even offered Professor Lewin, tell me what it would cost to spend 3 hours, and he wouldn't do it. I mean, he wouldn't do it because he's got his own theory he's working on, apparently, or something like that. It would be a conflict of theoretical bibble babble or some other kind of bullshit. It's just like some companies won't allow you to produce an unsolicited idea, because then they'll have to accept that you have copyright to it. They want to make sure they invent it internally. If they accept your advice of an invention, then they can't claim they thought of it first. They can't steal it. In other words, okay, if they allow you to have a written record of providing them an idea, then they can't claim, then they can't steal it. It's just that simple. If they admit they read your letter, they can't steal the crap then, right? That's in the letter. So anyway. So yes, fine, fuck you. Really, okay, fine. This is all stuff I've pointed out in numerous videos. Again, what else can I do? I can offer money. I can plead with the internet. Please, internet, please. I've pled with the flat Earth attackers. Please, attack me. Please, show me to be an idiot. And they won't show up to do it. And that's just the way it is. So until I'm a little more popular, until I can somehow get under their skin in some way, they're not going to debunk me. Okay, they're not going to show up to do it, because they know I'm going to have responses, and they know I'm going to answer the questions, and they know that my questions will not be answered because they have no answer. I mean, I asked them, well, which is it? Do photons interact with themselves? That's the theory. A single photon goes in, single photon interacts with its wave function and comes out in some weird position. Or in the case of other things, like the radar experiment, do individual photons interact with each other, and create the same effect? And what are the rules? Why apparently do different photons interfere with each other sometimes, and then sometimes they don't? I mean, there's no rules to this mush. You ask a simple question: what's the path of the light in the interferometer, and where does the interference happen? You won't get it. You won't get an explicit answer. This is what we know, because they don't know. Because if they sit on an assertion the assertion will be pick apartable. You'll be able to dissect out, no, it's not, can't happen that way because I can do this experiment that proves it doesn't happen that way. I mean, you would have thought that they really would have been challenged by the, when the guy finally did the one photon at a time experiment with the double slit and found he got the same pattern. That's when they should have had a moment where they said, okay, maybe this wave theory is stupid. But then they just invented this silly notion that, oh no, photons create two photons and go through to both slits. And I mean, they had to keep their theory, their wave theory. And they're so desperate. And then they're doing it in the context where, in water, there's no single slit interference pattern. In water, there's no multi-slit image transfer. So, I mean, the patterns really don't match, what happens in waves most of the time. Most of the wave experiments aren't consistent with what photons are doing. And they're just so glued on this double slit being similar. And it's not even the same pattern. Again, the light makes a different pattern than water waves make. And they're still glued to it. So anyway. So okay, this is just, so this whole idea that somehow this medium isn't perfectly suited to this purpose is just so ironic coming from people. First, there are people watching these videos, which is funny. But I mean, clearly this is a great medium, right? I mean, you can do face-to-face live interaction, or you can just do video exchanges, which I think are perfectly suitable to the purpose, where you can play the other guy's video and, respond to it. It's a perfect mechanism, and yet, these people will say, no, this isn't the way you should do it. No, this is exactly the way it should be done. Everything should be done this way. Politics, everything should be done right in your face. You get to see how it's done, what they're thinking. You see how they react. You see what questions they avoid. You can see it. It's right there in front of you. Why isn't this the perfect way to do it? So, yeah, I just write a book. Whatever. Yes, I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just saying, but it's not, I sit here live drawing pictures, answering questions. How is this somehow inadequate? It's a perfectly adequate way to interrogate ideas. It's funny how there's this general lack of appreciation for the power of this medium. I mean, yes, most of YouTube is crap, no doubt about it. But what's the crappier parts? The production videos, the ones that are just obvious propaganda, like the Electric Universe, where they don't engage in any interrogation. They just make these sappy videos with soothing music and and just talk their dogma. That's the part that sucks. This is the good part. Anyway, so. Not much more I can say. I mean, really, we are at the point where it's a complete enough theory. I mean, really, 2 + 2 + 2. You can't get, right? If it was 2 + 2, it would be even better, right? If there was no interactions. But I'm just saying, I've made it so simple. 2 forces, 2 matter, and 2 interactions. That's all there is. Just those things, those ingredients. That's it. 6 ingredients. That's all you got. 6 little ingredients. The fact that I have made a model out of something this simple just has to be, you have to say, even if you think it's wrong, you have to say, wow, it's pretty amazing that you can cover magnetism and electricity and gravity and all this stuff with those few parts. But that's all you need. And so this is the right answer. Okay, I'm just sorry, but the other people have the wrong answers. They don't work, and they're not answers. They're always relying on a catch-22, some piece of bullshit. Somehow tornadoes just exist, or some kind of crap like that. Anyway, so till the next time, and such. You can lead a horse to the water. Just can't make him drink. So it's nothing. I can't. I've, I think, done my job. You should be able to get this. That he has to be right. It's so simple. It wins Occam's razor victory by a mile. I mean, it's so much simpler. Yeah. Till next time and such. It's not working. It is funny. We'll save it. So till the next time and such. And I'll do some more writing. So that's sort of what I was saying. Yeah, I can finish that part. So when I was writing, the first part is getting people to let go of the existing nonsense, or at least be capable of understanding how they could have made mistakes. That they clung to these, first taking gravity out of physics. Essentially, bent space-time takes gravity out of physics. So you've lost one of the biggest sources of force in the universe, essentially, because you've taken this powerful force that moves planets and galaxies around, and you've essentially just wiped it out as part of the physics conversation. Where if you understood that it still existed as a force, as a real thing in the universe, then you could understand how, if I was to tell you that this magnet, this thing, trying to find a thing of something with two ends, I could place this magnet in that force, and I could explain to you, look, the magnet doesn't do anything except filter. So, when a little black piece of energy hits, it comes out this end, and when a red energy hits the black end, it comes out the red end, and so it's segregated something that already exists. So you don't have to have a new source of energy. It's making it out of the existing pressure. And I just point out how we already know the pressure exists, in the sense we know cosmic background radiation exists, that there's a whole bunch of pressure in the universe that we can't see easily. And so if I just explain to you, well, just like we can only detect certain frequencies, that there's frequencies out there that we don't detect, just like there's photons right now hitting my eyeball that my eye can't see because they're too short. They're not long enough rays. And so they're there, but I can't see them. Okay, so there's lots of pressure could be out in that universe. So, that's the critical mistake, right? And then quantum mechanics, the critical mistake is just doing this stupid wave crap. This emergent property and thinking everything's a wave. When no, everything's a real bit. And, photon is cannonballs, and the quantum mechanics. Quanta means cannonball. It doesn't mean wave. It means cannonball. It means clump, as Feynman would say. It comes in clumps. Feynman, your own god of your own bullshit, kept saying the words. Clump, 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 clump. And you're still all this resistance to understanding, oh, okay, yeah, particle theory could work. But that's my first job, is to just get you to let go of this stupid wave bent dimension bullshit, because that's just bullshit. There's 3 physical dimensions, and that's it. The word dimension is now used up. There's 3 dimensions. That's it. There's no other 4th, 5th, 6th. No. It doesn't happen. There's only up, down, left, right, forward, back. You can't make any more inside of the physical mechanism. There's no more room for any more dimensions. You're done. Let go of that nonsense. So, my first job is to get you to at least concede they could possibly be wrong. And they've provided you such weak evidence. Again, their evidence is so fucking weak. And yet you're so fucking convinced. And you're just saying, how can you be convinced by something so weakly evidenced? So badly evidenced? And then my second job is just to explain the real model and explain how, yes, round wheels work better than square wheels. Having a steering wheel changes everything. This car will move forward and back, and it'll do everything you need it to do, where your car doesn't go anywhere. It's such a piece of crap. You've got, the engine, under the ground, and you've got, no drive shaft, and, no hope. And then certainly no fuel for your virtual photon or your bent spacing thingy, your perpetual convergence. So anyway, so it does make it part of, like, because half the book has to be about why they're wrong, and the other half has to be about why I'm right. So anyway, so there's 2 books really. But anyway, till the next, and then you could subdivide those into 2 books. It could be 2 plus 2 plus 2 books. It could be 6 books you have to write. Oh damn! I don't want to write 6 books. But anyway. Till the next time.